Camera.
Oh,
And we're live.
well, hello, hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Okay. So we're gonna wait a few minutes before we ask questions, so people can hop on the live. But until then, because this is being recorded, so anybody who doesn't watch it live can watch it later on our YouTube channel. So be sure to check out the link, which will be provided at the end of this video. But you can also find it in our link tree, along with our previous Q&As. So before we get started getting in depth with the one and only Sir Dustin Pari, we are going to just go around really quick and introduce ourselves so that anybody who's not familiar with us, they can meet us. So I'll start with our team in general. So Epicedium Paranormal was founded a couple years ago in New Jersey. And our main thing is not only, obviously, number one priority is helping our clients, but secondary to that is we're all about research, Q&As, and conversations and communications. And so what is that with the paranormal? So for us, the paranormal isn't just ghosties. It's everything in the unknown, anything that could be possible, but you're not quite sure about. So that could be not only ghosties, but also aliens, cryptozoology, all that fun stuff. My name is Gail, and I am one of the founders of Epicedium. And yeah, I pretty much got into it like most people do. You have an experience, and you get curious, and you decide, let's figure more out about it, and in the process, help other people while you're doing it. So that's me. Brittany, why don't you let us know a little bit about you?
Yes, I'm Brittany. I'm also a founder of the team, an investigator, and yeah, pretty much the same. I went through something as a child, a haunting, and so ever since then, it's like my curiosity has grown more and more and more. So on the side, I'm always like researching on my own and going down all these different rabbit holes. So it's so great to be on a team with other like-minded people, wanting to do like the same goals, which is help others, help educate others, and just try to understand more and more about the paranormal.
Cool. Miss Sabrina.
Oh God, it's my turn. Hi, I'm Sabrina. I am brand new, kind of, sort of, to the team. I got on about a year ago. They lured me with steak and drinks, and I said, yes, I will be yours.
Wait, is there room on this team? Like, I never got steak and drinks with any team I've been part of. I feel like I'm like really kind of screwed out of the deal. This sounds much better.
It was really good. It was delicious. I mean, I paid for my own, but
still, that's nice.
It helped to lighten the interrogation process to find out, is she cool enough to be on our team with us?
I had to meet Jane Grant at a Starbucks, and I'm a Dunkin' Donuts guy, so nothing made sense to me from day one.
You got screwed.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sabrina. Please continue.
I've been with the team for just over a year, and unfortunately I haven't been able to do any kind of investigations because COVID. I am a police officer by day, and I love doing paranormal everything, actually, by day and by night. When I was little growing up, I had a lot of experiences, and in the house that I live in right now, I've had quite a few experiences where some of the things that happen here have been validated. And, in my daily job, I love helping people. And this is just another realm in which I can help more people. So very excited to be here.
Awesome. And last but not least, our guest for the evening, known for his moments on ghost hunters, his books, and also he's a motivational speaker, Mr. Dustin Pari.
Yay. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies, for having me. Pleasure to be here with everyone here tonight. My origin story is similar too. I'm just around 9 years old. It was a shadow figure was the first thing that I ever witnessed. So I started reading books, local libraries and stuff, because I'm too old, so there's no internet then. But I learned that way, and then I just started checking things out on my own. I didn't really know there were teams and things until really television started showing me. I was like, wow, I had no clue. Like, I was always by myself, or I was working in an ambulance company. People would meet me after my shift. We'd go to places and investigate. So that was all new to me. So I was excited when I saw that. But there was no steak or drink, but it was still a good journey. And I ended up doing several, on and off throughout Ghost Hunters for about a decade, and two and a half full seasons of the international show. then we hung out and, little cameos here and there, and Destination Truth and Ghost Nation. But still researching, still love the stuff. And same thing, just like you said, Gail, like it's not just ghosts for me. Like it's all types of like spiritual things I'm into. I've gone looking for cryptids. I love UFOs and aliens. Like I have a big tattoo of a gray alien, like the teardrop style on my calf. Like I got that like as soon as I turned 18. Like that was my thing, Like my childhood bedroom was all like alien stuff everywhere, So I've always been into all the weird things. Just never really felt. I don't know. I always kind of felt like there had to be more than this world. Like this world's got some really beautiful things, but I think the unknown and the things that you just catch like little pieces of are really interesting. So I like to focus on that stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
We hope to touch base on all of those little tidbits tonight.
Right.
Ask some questions.
Oh yeah.
So really we're just going to kind of start off with some general questions. So anybody who's not familiar with you, which I'm sure everybody who's watching is, but just because you never know. We'll start off.
If you're not, no worries.
Either way. So my first question was, what caused your interest in the paranormal? You kind of touched on that a little bit regarding a shadow figure.
Yeah.
Could you maybe let us know a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So it was the first home that we lived in. Like we were in an apartment prior to that. And one night I went off to bed. I was very much like a creature of habit, like I used to come home from school. I remember like I've gotten better with this, but I used to be like super OCD, like have to touch everything an even amount of times, like both hands, like all this crazy stuff. But I would come home from school, I'd do my homework, I would make pasta with white butter, the whipped butter, and then I'd sprinkle parsley on it because I'm fancy. And then I would go in my room and I would watch Star Trek and get ready for bed. And there was one night where I'd done all of that little process and I was off in bed. And the way the house was set up, there was a hallway that connected the two bedrooms, my parents' bedroom and my own. And then the living room was off that. And my parents were awake. The hallway light is on, and I'm getting ready to go to sleep. And I just got like this really like weird cold sensation. And I remember looking up and seeing in the doorway, fully backlit by the hallway light, what we would just classify as a shadow figure. In my experience, with these are usually not the black masses and stuff that we see, but the ones that look like human figures. They're usually like 6 feet tall, or about 2.5, 3 feet tall. I've never captured any audio with them, but this was one of the 6 feet tall ones, and I just was petrified. Like I loved Halloween. Like I used to decorate my bedroom for like Halloween, like in July. I used to make my own little gravesites and get those blocks of like the green foam from the florist and make like little gravestones and stuff, typical kid things, I guess. And but having this experience, I was petrified. I just pulled my covers over my head and I said my prayers, and I'm like, I never want to see this thing here again. And I never ever did. But little did I know like what a path that would put me on, So it's been a heck of a ride since then, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting because a lot of us seem to get into it due to an experience you have as a kid. It's
right.
Kind of one of those things, they talk about how as a child you're slightly more open to these experiences, these energies. And I have to say, like the majority of the time when you talk to paranormal investigators and you ask them, what piqued your interest? I want to say like 80% of the time, when I was a kid, I thought I had this happen.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's so rare that you ever come across somebody who's like, oh yeah, I was always interested in it, but I never saw anything. Like those people are definitely the minority,
Right. Or they're the skeptics who want to prove us wrong.
Right. Yeah. Which is, I don't know. I've always found that interesting. Like, I think it's good to have a skeptical mind about things. Like, don't believe everything everyone tells you. And you go to look for something, you go to check out a case. Like, you want to, kind of be open-minded, but be looking for other explanations. But like the people that are like hateful skeptical, like that's what I don't understand, Like, I mean, I'm a religious person too. And I'm like, it's okay if you're atheist and you don't believe things, but like, the hateful atheists, I don't understand either. It's like, if you don't believe in something, I use the same analogy all the time. Like, if you don't believe there's a boogeyman in your closet, would you stand there and yell into the closet all day that there's no boogeyman there? Like, no, you just live your life. So, like, if you don't believe in the paranormal, if you don't believe in a god or goddess, like, that's cool. Just do whatever your thing is. Like, don't hate on other people that are enjoying their thing. Like, that's okay.
Right. Right. And I always at least find that it's those skeptics that go running out first when they hear a bang in the darkness on an investigation.
I was doing an event, like a paid event, like people come, show up for the thing, as they do. And there's always like the husband or wife or boyfriend or whatever that gets dragged into it that hates this stuff. And I was using one of the Ghost Box apps, the Phasma Box one that I like. And we're taking turns asking questions, and really like not much is coming through at all. And finally, like the angry boyfriend or husband, whoever he was, he comes to him to ask his question. And we're sitting in the restaurant of this old hotel. And he's like, whatever, what is this room used for? And it's like the only thing that comes through, and it's loud and clear. And it's a girl, and it's like condescending. She's like, it's a restaurant. I was like, I love when that happens, I'm like, I'm sure you guys come across that. It's like, that's when they seem to reach out the most, and it's so wonderful. It's like, yeah, like give them that snark right back,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's great.
So our next question, as always, we hope that your family and you have been safe during this whole crazy time.
Yeah.
We were just curious, what are some of the things you guys have been doing to keep sane?
So I work in healthcare by day, and so I never actually had a day off. So I work in facial, oral, and cosmetic surgery. I'm the CMO of the company. I did anesthesia there for years. I still do work surgically when they need me, but we never closed the office per se. I mean, we had to be open for emergencies. We did have to close, for about 5-6 weeks. But I was still there to manage the schedule, to get the HVAC installation updated, like do all those things. Wife and daughter stayed home, obviously. The schooling thing, everything getting kind of wonky. But thankfully, everybody, all my family, everybody was fine. Everyone was safe. So that's good. And it was just, learning and adapting to doing new things, and I do a lot of my travels and such, doing events. And so all those kind of came to a halt, but still wanting to do my lectures, still wanting to, be able to tell my stories and share my ideas. And I bought my little light kit here, and I stood here in this very spot, and I did 78 lectures from right here. So I actually ended up doing 80 events on the whole year. I did one in person in January or February, and then I did one in person in December. And other than that, it was like in October, it's 4 to 5 lectures a day just here.
Yeah.
So I was excited because, I like traveling, but it's a lot easier when I could just stay in one place. I do miss I like the lonely romance of like driving all night, like to get to a location, doing the gigs, seeing the people face to face, signing some autographs, selling some books, and then like cranking up my radio, hitting a diner on the way back. Like there's something to that speaks to me. But the fact that I could, do a lecture for a library here in New England and then be doing one for California in a couple of hours was really cool, because it's a whole different audiences and just different people get to hear different stories. So, so that was a lot of fun. So I appreciated the opportunities that came out of it. And I never would have thought like, a pandemic year would be my busiest year ever, but that's just how it turned out. So thankful for the opportunities, glad everybody was safe, and, just hope things continue to get better for everybody.
Yeah,
Couldn't agree more.
Oh yeah.
Definitely been one of those years of pluses and minuses, because like some really good things have come out of this. People spending time with their families, learning kind of more of that simple life. But then of course you have the cons of, you don't get to see your friends, you don't get to go to locations. So definitely an interesting reversal of fortune for some.
Well, plus traveling all the time too. Like, there's certain groups and stuff like I've become friendly with over the years, and I'm used to seeing like, I have dinner with the same like group from Michigan every year when I do MI Paracon. I have lunch with my buddy Russ every year at MI Paracon, and so it's just like weird. Like, oh, okay, like that's not happening this year. It's just kind of an odd little thing. But I also realized how ill prepared. Like, I always think, because I like The Walking Dead and stuff, and I always think, all right, come apocalypse, like I'm gonna be fine. Like, I'm a decent fighter if I have to. Like, I work out a lot. I'm pretty healthy. I can outrun things. That'll be good. But like, there I am at the market, like the day before everything's closing, and I came home and I had like 5 boxes of lasagna and 5 things of Reese's Puff cereal. My wife's like, "What are you doing with that?" I'm like, "I don't know. But it was all that was left, so I just started buying." Like whenever I could find, just like I was like, God, there was other items there, but I just grabbed the bulk of things. I wouldn't last very long from a food standpoint, I guess.
I mean, I don't think anyone ever thought in a zombie apocalypse the biggest thing to worry about would be toilet paper. I mean,
like that would just go to the wayside. Be like, well, I guess we're all going to be dirty for a while, but no one's going to get the fancy baby wipes. But what are you going to do?
2020, the year of the bidet.
Yeah. That's it. These European people had it right the whole time.
Right? Darn it.
Thailand like a few years ago, and that's all they have there. I was told as an outsider, if you need toilet paper, you need to bring it with you.
Right.
So it was like when I got to our first destination, there was a gift basket there, and inside the gift basket were just little packages of tissues, and they're like, just bring it with you wherever you go because they don't know.
Yeah, it's a whole different world. By the way, in my travels, Romania, at least the hotels they put me in had the worst, roughest, god-awful, wafer-like consistency toilet paper I've ever seen in my life.
No.
Honestly, it was like pink. It looked like those pink sugar cookie things that you get. I'm like, what the heck is this? I'm like, this is awful. It was really bad.
Have you tried government toilet paper?
Yeah, I personally haven't. It might have been Romanian government toilet paper out there. I don't know.
Oh
They outsourced it from Romania.
You learn things when you travel, for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
That's so funny. All right. So for our next question, so for anyone who doesn't know, you are an author of a few books.
Yeah.
What inspired you to write them?
My uncle who passed away a couple of years ago now, was just always one of my favorite people. I've always felt a real kinship with him. And I remember in high school reading some of his poetry and stuff and thinking this is really cool. He never published anything, but it was a passion, and one of the things he taught me, which is something I still try to pass on to my motivational work, is, finding that gray area of life. He worked as a deputy tax assessor for the city. And, he had a little office and he had the suit and tie all day, but he had this long gray ponytail that he kept tied up all day, And when he came home, the ponytail came down and the tie came off, and it was just jeans and the guitar and playing music and drinking beer and writing stories. And I just liked that so much. I thought there was a lot of wisdom in knowing that we have to do certain things to survive in this life, but then we can still pursue passions on the side. And, there's always that little bit of us, I think, that wants to live forever one way or another. I physically know, hopefully I have some years left, but I'm tired now. I definitely wouldn't want to be here forever. But you like maybe your stories and maybe your ideas and some memories to continue on, So it was important for me in the beginning, working with Barry from the international show, to put some of our international investigations together on paper and to write about some of our theories. And then after that, it became more of a personal thing for me from a motivational standpoint, to share some of the things that I've learned and that I've gone through, and just some of the weird things that I've observed over the years, So that's how that all came together. And I'm still writing now. I'm still busy working on some more books and everything.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, can we expect more books from you in the near future?
Yeah. I'm actually working on my first ever fiction book, and it's crazy. It's kind of like a little bit of Wizard of Oz and a little bit of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but it's like a weird motivational journey with crazy characters and stuff. There's a talking monkey. He's my favorite so far. So yeah, there's that. And then I'm working on a Christmas book too. So there's all kinds of stuff.
I love it.
Yeah.
And all your books also seem to have the theme of kind of living life positively and having that motivational aspect to it, which is great, especially in these days, just to have some of that positivity in your life.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I try my best. It's funny, one of my little pet peeves, because I get aggravated with things too. And sometimes people ask advice, and I go on my way to try to help. I always tell them, listen, I'm not a therapist, but I have a helpful heart, and I'll try to offer you advice or point you in the right direction or something. And a lot of times people are like, oh, if it was just that easy. I'm like, well, of course it's not easy. If it was that easy, you wouldn't have had to ask me. You would have just done it. We all would have done it. It would have been fine. But I think sometimes we get lazy and we don't want to work for it. We don't want to go through the change. We don't want to go through those difficult moments, But I mean, trust me, every morning I get up, you think I want to go get my cold truck and then drive to work and press buttons like a monkey all day in front of the computer. I'm like, this is not my passion. I don't want to do that, But I find a day job that I don't hate, and I feel like I help some people here and there, and so that's good. That's good. But then you do the passion stuff on the side, and that's why I try to tell people, like, listen, you may want to be like a rock star or an actor or an actress, but like it just didn't work out that way. But you can still be a waitress by day and still like do local theater at night. Like if it means a lot to you, find a way to do it. So those are some of the things I always try to pass along in all the stories and the books and things. So I appreciate you noticing that.
It's funny. People ask, like, what do I do for a living? And I was like, well, you mean the way I pay my bills or the way I live my life? Because those are very different things.
Yeah.
And so for a living, like to pay my bills, I'm in the mortgage industry, which don't hate me, people, please. I'm that bad person that wants 1,000,001 pieces of documentation from you. But at night, that's when, the real job, it might not even job, real passion happens when I can research, I can help people and reach out to the paranormal.
Yeah, it's so important to have that balance, though. And it is. It's like it doesn't feel like work. When I come home and I sit in front of my laptop and I'm typing up a lecture, I'm researching something. It doesn't feel like work. Like it's fun for me to do. I put my music on. And it's like everything's great. So it's balance is really so key in everything that we do, I think.
Definitely.
So
jumping into that a little bit, though, your passion in the paranormal. Let's start with a pretty basic question. So in your opinion, what do you believe ghosts or spirits are?
So for me, most of the investigations that we do, a lot of the stuff we get, as we know, you classify like residual energy, this, that, and the other. But the actual spirits that we talk with, I believe a majority of them are people like us that have just passed away. My personal belief is that no one is ever truly trapped here. I think that a loving God or goddess or deity, whoever you may or may not subscribe to, would never put like the lock on heaven and you say, well, you can't come in, you have to stay here. That being said, I think some maybe linger a little bit longer than others. I think some check in a lot more than others, and it's always okay to like have different ideas about things. Like some people get so mad if you don't say the same thing they believe. Like that's totally cool. We don't all have to sing from the same hymnal all the time, but I just kind of feel like heaven's not that far away. The afterlife isn't that far away. And then our spirit's able to kind of come and go. I think that a loving deity would allow for that ability for us to check in. And then some of the stuff we come across, I've come across, seems to have almost like an alien type nature to it as well. Like I've gotten a lot of EVPs or even communication sessions where I'm being told that they're watching us from above, which like, okay, well, heaven could be above, but sometimes they say from ships. Sometimes they call us earthies. I was like, it's interesting terminology. I'm like, so maybe, we're tapping into some of that. I don't know if you've ever noticed or if you've ever happened to see, or if you get a chance to see, there was a documentary that was made on the geological makeup of the ground beneath the Stanley Hotel. And in the extras, if I remember correctly, the extras at the end of that DVD or whatever it was, they had an interview with Frank, who made the initial Frank's box. And like he believed that he was communicating with aliens at the time, So I think there's a blend over of things, I think that we sometimes limit our thoughts about who we're communicating with because we're thinking who we want to communicate with. But maybe these things and our techniques, or even ourselves, I think we limit ourselves a hell of a lot. Like, I don't think we need a lot of the tech stuff. I think we can do a lot more than we give ourselves credit for, but we can reach out and tap into all kinds of things sometimes. Or maybe I'm just crazy and we're all nuts, but it's also possible, and that's okay too.
And I don't think you're crazy at all. In fact, we recently had a conversation with one of the people from, I don't know if you've seen it, there's a show called Hellyer, where it started out, we had a conversation with Connor Randall, and he kind of tapped on the same thing where, you go into these scenarios. They thought they were walking into a scenario that was about goblins, and by the end of it, it was not it kind of was, but it also wasn't.
Yeah.
Like aliens, there was like other entities,
right.
ghosties, and you kind of can't see it as a black and white. It's all very gray.
Yeah, for sure. And a million shades somewhere in there, and just like the amount of things I think that when we think about like collective consciousness and things, I think that's the part that we're missing out on, because we often think that we're limited to what we can see and touch in our physical bodies. But mentally, I think just like when we talk about after we pass away, the consciousness is, limitless. We can go different places. Time doesn't, move the same way. We can interact differently. I think we could do that now. But I think we've been, and this is not like a comment on current political status or whatever, because whoever the hell's been in the White House, I've always had to work at least 2 jobs, and life just gets by, and I just do my best to be nice. So I'm just going to keep doing that regardless. But I kind of feel like throughout time, the world has changed in such a way where it used to be we were very spiritual people. And all of a sudden, when things started to become more organized, many, many, many years ago, we started to keep the spiritual separate from the ways of life, And now I kind of feel like we keep people dumbed down, we keep people in debt, we keep people distracted, and we've developed this wonderful little dystopian society. But if we really strip away some of that nonsense, all the plastic things, all the credit cards, all the keeping the Kardashian BS and reality TV shows, I think that we would really start to see each other differently and see that these ancient civilizations that sat around the campfires at night and talked about loftier things and talked about their communications with the gods and goddesses. Yes, I know some of their understandings now we can explain scientifically, but there's still a lot that we can't. And I think a lot of stuff is still kind of kept from us. And I think we need to kind of get back to some of those things.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And when you touch on that and people's points of views, we recently had a great analogy presented to us where the whole world sees the same soda can, but we're all looking at a different side of the can. So some people are seeing the ingredients, some people are seeing the labels, some, the advertisements. And so we're all looking at the same thing, but we're all just looking at it differently.
Right.
And maybe if we were to sit down and have this conversation and put those pieces together and look at the different sides of the can and see it as a whole, we might figure some of this stuff out.
Right? But it's weird because people always want to fight about the differences. Even with world religions and things, we fight about the differences. It's well, if we strip away the differences at the core, we find pretty much always the same thing. It's about love and kindness and looking out for each other. But we don't also have to rip away the differences. We can celebrate the different understandings and the different ways people view things. And you said, put all that together. There's an old analogy that I use a lot, which is very similar to your soda can one, that is imagine 2 blind men using their hands on opposite ends of an elephant and trying to describe what being they're encountering. That's completely different. They can't possibly imagine this is the same thing, but yet it is. We're just experiencing it in a different way, in a different place. But if we, like you said, if we could put the views together, we'd probably come to some more colossal truth. But one of the nice commonalities about us here humans is that we don't like that. We like to butt heads and fight, and we always have to be right about our thing. I just always assume I'm wrong, and then everything's a wonderful mystery.
I love it.
Right? And if I'm wrong, I'm still winning because I was right about being wrong. So in some way, everything works.
It's a win-win.
Yeah.
And that's probably why you have a very happy marriage, because you're willing to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah, I don't fight about anything. It's fine. It's fine. Whatever it is, it'll be fine.
Well, speaking of happy marriages, this perfect segue into the next question. What's your favorite piece of equipment? I didn't know how to make it work.
I was trying to figure out, we don't have an S&M thing or anything. We're married.
Oh my God, I didn't even think of that.
Sabrina, you're the police officer. I just met you 28 minutes ago. And
Right?
Well, the people want to know.
Try to keep it PG, Sabrina.
Oh, man.
I don't like to use, in paranormal investigations, I don't like to have a lot of equipment around because I just feel like we've become too tech heavy in our day-to-day lives. And I can never be the guy with the fisherman's vest with all the batteries and the lights and things, I just like to be present in the moment. The people with all the cameras and all the things, if somebody's going to document that one experience at night, that's something, showing itself, it'll be the person with all the cameras for sure. But I kind of feel like, just like remember when people could go to concerts and they'd all be like this filming the concert? Can you really say you were there though? Because you saw the whole thing through your phone, even though you were there, you're never going to watch it again and the sound quality is going to suck. But at the same time, you're like, I'm going to save this forever. It's live it right now. That's the important thing. So for investigations, that's how I feel too. For clients, yes, you want to document. For TV purposes, of course, you have to document. But for me, I just like to be there in the moment and observe what's there. If there's that chance of communicating with the other side or witnessing something, I want to do that. For when I do try to do communication things, if I am doing an event or trying to document things, Phasma Box is my favorite, like ghost box style device, just because there's no static. And I find that I've had really, really great results with it over the years. And just a simple EVP recorder, like nothing too fancy. You know, I just feel like that's the easiest thing to use. It's where you get most of the evidence. Photos and stuff and videos, great, but it's so rare you come across something. And then, I mean, if you're doing it to try to prove it to other people, no one's going to believe it anyway. So I'd just rather be a part of it and see what's going on.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that.
I would feel like most paranormal investigators who have been in it a while, when you ask them your favorite piece of equipment, 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, my recorder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's what because it doesn't really get to you in the moment, but later on you can listen back to it and you get some really cool.
Yeah, it's tried and true, and it's not like watching the DVR footage later is never rewarding. It's always just like you can barely keep your eyes open. You're tired. Like, did I just miss something? Where did the last 10 minutes go? Let's go back again. And it's like you're just still staring at a hallway. You find something, but it's so difficult. Like, I can't stay awake long enough.
I think that's one of the biggest annoyances as a investigator when you watch these TV shows. They make it seem so easy to watch 24 hours of video in like 10 minutes, and you're like, that's not how it is. It's long and boring.
I was like the original fanboy with Ghost Hunters, because like I had never had that type of equipment. It was always just like me and some random friends or strangers out in some building. And my legal disclaimer: do not just go trespassing in abandoned buildings. But that's how I had started doing this stuff. And then all of a sudden I get to like work with these Ghost Hunter guys, and then I'm like, they're like, oh, we're going to review evidence. I'm like, oh my God, can I watch DVR? Like, so excited. And then I'm like, oh my God, this really sucks. Like, I just sat in my hotel room all day and watched the same thing we did last night. Like the highlight was Steve, like scratching himself. Like that's, I mean, it's great, but like, really, who wants to watch that?
Yeah, so and the 1 second that you look away for whatever reason, that's when something happened. And
right? I remember we did a case. Oh, come on, brain. It was in South America. I don't know if it was Brazil or if it was Argentina, but we had literally, so within the second video of your 24 frames, it was just in one frame, an image of a shadow of a man in the hallway that was not there in any of the other frames. You know, Barry and I talked a lot about this, about the time in which apparitions or spirits or whatever these things are moving. You know, then we started using like these long exposures with the still cameras and seeing that their time is not matching up to ours. So yeah, sometimes it's one frame of 1 second. So yeah, what are the chances you get a blank at some point, you know, it's ridiculous.
You yawn or something and your eyes close.
It's crazy.
All right. So for anyone who may be watching who wants to become a paranormal investigator, what piece of advice would you give them?
Just make sure you're doing it for like the right reasons. Like if you just want to try to be on TV, just go try to be an actor or an actress. Like don't, because you're not going to find your you might get a little bit of fame with this stuff, but you most likely not going to find your fortune. So if that's what you're after, go do something else, and that's completely cool. If you just like this stuff because you like it, that's great. The first thing you can do is research, like read, see who's come before you. You know, check out some of the old books, like read some old Holzer stuff, like get into like where things began. You know, like, research things about the Fox sisters, learn about like the old rapping techniques, get into the old things and find what you think is interesting and pursue that. And just, it's always, you know, one of those things where you get out there, you want something exciting to happen. And as you ladies know, 99% of the time, there's not too much going on, you know, and make sure you don't go down that rabbit hole of, well, I could fake things and record it. And like, well, yeah, you can. But then one, you know, it's nonsense. So it's not really exciting. And anybody who's been in the field a while is going to look at it and they're going to know it's nonsense. So really there's no sense in doing any of that, you know, but just prepare yourself for disappointment, prepare yourself for just sitting around. But then for me, the thing that was always redeeming was the historical value of the places that I got to go, learning the history of the houses, the family members that lived in the houses. You know, not everything is a big castle, but even the small old houses that you do, like they have a history, you know, listen to the stories of the people that are there and just experience what you can experience, you know, because some of that stuff is more important than those one little things you're trying to capture.
Right. And I think when you do these investigations, a big part of it is the energy of the room or the location. And the older and more historical it is, the more you can almost like, I hate to use this term, but like bathe in it, you know, like you walk in and you just feel the like historical tingles around you.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so great too, you know, like it really is. I'm kind of spoiled here being in New England. Like the heritage is a little bit older than some of the other parts of the country. So we have some of the older buildings and the older houses and the old Victorian mansions and stuff. Just so cool to be in, I think about like the big dinner parties that they probably had and all the fancy things that went on there. And it's a nice opportunity, So even when we do the events and stuff, like I always tell people, like, listen, chances are you're not going to witness anything paranormal, but you might make a new friend tonight. You might hear a new story. Like, just enjoy the moment for what it is. That's good for, advice for all of life, really.
Yeah, definitely. So with all of that being thought of, and we kind of touched on a couple misconceptions of the paranormal. What do you think is the biggest one that the public has regarding the paranormal and investigating?
All right, so this is a lightning rod type thing, but this is my own personal opinion. Nobody else has to believe it. That's fine. But the number one thing that I just can't wrap my head around is the "do you know you're dead" question. I feel like I never really heard that question prior to the Sixth Sense. And then after that, that's all I heard. And I always think if we're dealing with intelligent beings, they've had to know that, like I didn't take a bath in a long time. I've had no bowel movement. I haven't had to pay a bill. There's been no traffic. There's been no intimate moments.
Right.
There's probably something wrong here, So I don't, when I hear people go down that, or they start with the gloom and doom stuff, especially, I do work for suicide awareness and suicide prevention. And a lot of these places we go to, unfortunately, have some of those stories. And like, we don't have to play the gloom and doom card, like the afterlife doesn't have to be dark and shadows and demons and sadness. Like, we're all going to die sometime. Let's like try to lighten the mood a little bit, And one of the cases I did, it was, was it the Jefferson Hotel? It was a very sad story about a young girl who passed away there. She was a teenager, I want to say in the 90s. And everyone started gloom and dooming it. Like, no. I'm like, let's try something different. Like, nobody wants that to be what they're remembered by, that last tragic moment, that sadness. I'm like, what would she maybe have been into? And I love using music. I couldn't do it on TV, but I would do it off camera, and I do it a lot in my own investigations to bring people together. Like, to me, I listen to a song, and I know a lot of times where I was the first time I heard it, or why is that significant? So we put out those little plasma balls, the ones you touch and like it lights up the sides. Not great for, hardcore evidence, but I put a bunch of them out and I started playing like Nirvana and like 90s, like alternative rock and stuff. And asked, do you like this song? Maybe you like this type of music. And then like seeing if anything, like, could you touch the balls to go with the beat or something like that? And just the feeling in the room itself got better. Like people were on this gloom and doom channel and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a second. Like, yeah, this was the sad, tragic last moment of this girl's life, but that's not what she was about. That doesn't define her.
Right.
So let's do something different, So stay away from the gloom and doom and stop reminding people that they're dead. I'm pretty sure they figured it out.
Just so try to relate to the space and the entity and just talk about what you think they'd be interested in.
Yeah, I use the analogy all the time. Like, picture yourself going on a blind date. Like, if people actually still went on dates and not just swiped left or right. I don't know how it works. I haven't been single in forever. But the idea of going on a blind date, like, if you just talk about yourself, it's not going to go very good for very long. And if you just force ideas onto the other person, they're going to be kind of closed off too. But, you're going to a place where somebody maybe passed away that was really passionate about politics, or maybe they were involved in a war, or maybe their trade, their profession was something that they were passionate about. Bring about, take a more cerebral approach to asking EVP questions. Stay away from the stock things and try to bring about something that somebody would want to talk about. Make it an inviting conversation. KJ McCormick and I, when we did the last couple of seasons of Ghost Hunters, both being dads and such, we'd sit around and just, like, before the investigation started, per se, even though we were doing it, we would just sit around and tell dad jokes and like talk about our families and like try to create an inviting environment for someone to want to be a part of, instead of like the interrogation of, what year is it? Do you know you're dead? Like, just stop at that stuff and just try to have a conversation about things.
Question.
Yes.
Do you always go into an investigation with the thought that not everything could be bad?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm always aware of, sometimes there are negative things around and such, but I always try to go in with the most optimistic hopes for the investigation and also for the interactions that come along with it. 9 times out of 10 for me, spirits that, if they are going to talk to me, they're usually women or children. They're usually lighthearted. That's like, I hardly ever get like the Get Out. I usually don't get anything with expletives in it. I kind of feel like you catch what you bait your hook with, So I try to put out good things, and there's nothing like forceful or angry about what I'm doing. I stay away from like, the interrogation techniques. I stay away from provoking and that kind of thing. And so I usually get pretty good things, and once in a while you get somebody's a little cantankerous or whatever, but like I don't play the demon card and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the energy you emote is what you attract.
I think that's, true in this life as in the afterlife, like your circle of friends usually are of similar mindsets and similar personalities, like, everyone has their bad day once in a while, but for the most part, we kind of attract the same likeness as that we put out there.
Definitely.
I agree.
Sense.
Oh, me. Hi.
Sabrina's so great at this.
We're waiting.
This is, not gonna lie, this is my first time. So, so during COVID, as you know, we can't really do investigations in clients' houses for those groups that are client-based. Do you have any suggestions about what client-based groups could do in terms of going to the home during the pandemic? And do you have any suggestions in alternative ways that they might be able to work around that?
Sure. So, and that's a really good question for right now. And number one thing is always, you have to make sure you're comfortable with going out or going to someone's home and they're comfortable with it as well. If you know the client and you've already established a relationship, if they're comfortable with you being there without them being there, or them being in a part of the house that's not active at all so that you can do what you need to do, you try to find ways around it. It may not be ideal, but it's not an ideal time, so we just figure it out, Educating the client, having them keep a journal. But this is always one of the biggest things. Have them journal and write down, like, what's happening, when's it happening, who's there when it's happening. Let them be more of an active part of the investigation since you can't be there, but then you're there to interpret the evidence and try to look at things. The nice thing about, the way that we have Zoom and everything now, everything could be a DVR camera. You could have them leave their computer up on a Zoom session down a long hallway, with the lights on, and you could sit there at your house and watch it all night too and see if anything happened, So there's ways that we can still kind of do what we do from a remote way, and even if it's going off and dropping off a recorder someplace, they're not going to be home, you're not going to be there, you just leave something there recording, you're not there to actively ask these questions, but maybe you'll pick up something anyway. So there's ways that we can still try to find it. Again, not ideal. Are you going to be able to rule everything out? No, because you're not there to do so. But maybe you can get some things that can at least point you in the direction that you can get some answers of what's going on. We just have to adapt and find new ways until everything's clear to do so. But there's ways to do it for sure.
Question from that guy Tim. Do you think the state of the country is causing negative energy to spike? That's a great question.
There's so remember in Ghostbusters 2 where there was the evil slime underneath the city? Like, I feel like we've always been feeding that slime. Like, if you go back, if you just put in like my Twitter timeline and search like my name and pink slime, like I tweeted a lot, like for years. Like if I go to work and I just feel a lot of that negativity, I'm like, oh, the pink slime's strong today. Like, again, I do think we put a lot of that stuff out there, and it's a lot of. I was just having this conversation the other night. Like it's easy for us sometimes to look at ourselves physically and see the damage that we do to our bodies based on the things that we put in it. If we drink too much, we feel really bad. If we eat too many bad things, our stomach doesn't feel right. If we do this in excess, we do a lot of damage to our bodies, and we can see that. But emotionally, it's hard to gauge by looking at somebody or by looking at ourselves and seeing what we take in. But we're the same product physically and emotionally of what we put into ourselves. So reading negative social media posts, fighting with people that are behind their keyboards because you're on different ideas of political things or paranormal things or anything else, it's doing nothing good for us internally. It's just ripping things apart. And I think as we talk about like that collective consciousness, we build that negativity that's out there, and I think that just kind of creates an environment no one really wants to be a part of. Some days it just feels icky out there. So I just try to do my best to keep things positive. You know, I go to the gym a lot. I listen to my music. I get myself amped up. If I feel like I've had a negative interaction with somebody, I do what I can to kind of brush it off. You know, I'm not going to sit there and run myself down with sage all the time, but listen to a song by Elvis or something, and I go work out, and I feel a little better about things. So yeah, we're a product of what we put out there. So it's more reason for us to be mindful of it. Mm-hmm. Thank you, that guy Tim, for your question.
Yes. Okay, so I kind of touched on this before a little bit, but some members of our team, more than others, tend to do a lot of paranormal research on their own. And time to time, we go down different rabbit holes. Mm-hmm. So being a fellow paranormal researcher, what is maybe one or two different topics or pieces of information that you've personally come across that you found to be like either mind-blowing or just so damn interesting?
Well, you know, one of the things that for me has just been really interesting in the last couple of years is, as I mentioned before, kind of moving away from some of the technology. And there was something that, you know, for many years, especially when I was doing the international program with Barry, working with the full spectrum camera and looking at the way different light affects different, seems to affect different entities, it was very interesting to me. But as I investigated further, and like we kind of talked about, I find more and more that I'm more interested in some of the older, stripped down, simpler ways of communicating, you know? And I find that if you really focus upon things and you put the effort in there, which is a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of practice, some of the old things like the knocks and response, like taking it from beyond just one for yes, twice for no, three for I don't know, and working on different techniques like that, we can find out that there was a lot of truth to some of the older ways. You know, we often think because now we've got, you know, well, I've got this, and then now it has a thermometer, and it's got a laser beam, and I can make a laser grid, and it's an audio recorder, and it senses pressure. It's like, well, that's great. What does it do for you, though, exactly? Well, I can do all these things. Like, yeah, but have you worked with it? Have you spent time with it? You know, I kind of find that regardless of what the technique is or the piece of equipment, the more time we practice with it, the more time that it becomes almost like an extension of ourselves, you know? I have an old radio hack box that I've had for years. And out of all the new things, the new gadgets I've ever used, that thing still works the best for me. And it just, I think there's like a familiarity somehow that becomes a connection, you know? And there's some stuff that's been written about that I started to look into. That I was like, there is something to this, you know, about just the time that you spend with your techniques or with whatever it is that you like to use, become the best that you can at that thing. You know, don't spread yourself so thin where like you've got 1,000,001 things in your paranormal kit and you kind of know how to use half of them.
I love it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's equipment can be tricky. It's funny if you were to walk up to somebody and say, "Oh, you have a periscope over there. How does that work?" And they're like, "It lights up." Yeah, but why? Right. So yeah, definitely knowing what you're doing is very key.
Yeah, knowing what you're measuring and everything, you know, it's very important. And one of the best books I've ever read, at least for me, that I thought was interesting, was called Spook, the Science Tackles the Human Soul, or something like that. It was by, I want to say Mary Roach. And in there is a bunch of different things. You know, they talk about like the 28 grams test, like weighing the soul. They talk about the moment of ensoulment, that kind of thing. But one of the things they talked about in there was about infrasound, and not just the fact that there's these lower frequencies we can't hear, but what I found interesting, especially with a lot of the places that we investigate, you know, we're in basements so people feel uncomfortable and they get that cold spot. And because we have theorized that energy is being pulled, it gets colder. That's why they're, you know, ghosts are present. But when we talk about infrasound has the unique ability to pull in cold, and where it does, it causes a cold sensation. And it usually does so in long hallways, in stone-lined chambers or castles or basements. And when it does, if you enter that section, it causes a quivering of your eye, which makes you feel or perceive a gray type image out in your peripheral vision. So a lot of times when we see people say, "Oh, I felt cold," and all of a sudden I saw this gray image out of the corner of my eye. Well, NASA has proven that at a certain level of infrasound, they can replicate that exact thing. So it's kind of interesting to see that there's still some ideas out there that even though we know we're measuring for infrasound, okay, but what does that mean? What can that replicate? What can that cause us to think? So these are some of the things that we've just kind of scratched the surface on, and I think there's even more for us to learn.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah.
So earlier on, you kind of touched on your experiences on the show, Ghost Hunters and Ghost Hunters International.
Yeah.
Which I think for a lot of us, that's really what kind of brought the passion of the paranormal to the mainstream, right? And so it was kind of a basis of how a lot of people learned how investigations are run and how to help clients. So was being on television was something you always wanted to do when you got into this field, or how did that come to fruition?
So like I said, when I started, I didn't even know there were teams. So to go from a couple of years, of doing that on my own or just with random people to seeing a TV show and people on it, like groups of people not getting chased out of places, I'm like, what is going on here? So at that time, I wasn't even thinking so much about being on TV, but I had seen that they were filming in Rhode Island. And I was like, they're like down the street from where I work. Like maybe like I could meet up with them or whatever. And so I'd emailed everybody. And I like to remind them anytime they need my help for something, no one emailed me back. And it took several emails before somebody decided they would meet with me. And I was glad. And I just told them, like, listen, I have a background in television production. Before I got into healthcare, I worked for CBS and Fox News affiliates here in New England. I was like, I know how to run cameras. I know how, like, I see the way you guys take care of your DVR equipment. Like, I could probably help out with a lot of that stuff, And so they said I could. I just couldn't be on the show, but I could be on the team and do home cases, which was exactly what I was looking for at the time. And then it was, kind of a tryout. They asked me to be on one of the shows they were filming locally, and it just kind of took off from there. So it wasn't my ambition to be a part of the TV show originally. It was just to get access to homes and be able to investigate places that you should be instead of just, the abandoned things.
Okay. Another question from Patricia, whose daughter is so cute. You do a lot of amazing things. How do you manage all of the different hats you wear in life?
Well, I don't sleep a heck of a lot, so it gives me a little more time. But it is a very delicate balance of things for sure. It's the day job sometimes takes up a little too much of the time that I want it to, but it's going to be there, so that's okay. And it's just making sure I have time to pursue the passion projects, and writing the books is something that, if the muse isn't on that day and I don't feel like it's right, then I don't sit and write that day. I do something else. My lectures come together from a lot of like audio recording notes on my phone, scraps of paper. Like I'll wake up in the middle of the night, write something down, have no idea what the heck it means in the morning, but I try to put it all together. So I just take things as they come. Like I don't force myself to do any one particular thing outside of the day job when I don't want to, So if I feel like today is like author Dustin Day, then we'll work on writing. If I feel like writing motivational stuff and working on the YouTube series, then we work on that. So I don't force myself to do anything I don't want to do when I don't want to do it. So I think that helps keep that inner child happy. I think the creativity process would suffer if I'd be like, I have to get this done by this. I don't work that way. I get very distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but that's the answer that I have.
Definitely.
All right.
You wear the hats as you feel like putting them on.
Yes, indeed.
Makes sense.
I should let you answer the question, Gail. That was
I just summarized. That's all.
So you've been to Europe and all over the world and the United States, obviously.
Yeah.
What is your favorite location that you've investigated?
My favorite location that I've ever been to would, in terms of like the best case ever for me, was the Clark Air Base in the Philippines. And this was a place that was an outpost for the American soldiers during Vietnam. And it was the only case I've ever gone to where, I mean, as you know, if you go to a client's house and you say, okay, what's your activity? They're like, oh, we hear footsteps on the stairs. We saw an apparition walk in the kitchen. A spoon fell over. So you look for those things, and 9 times out of 10, you don't get any of them. Maybe you'll get one. The Clark Air Base is the only place I've ever been where everything that they said, they witnessed that was going to happen, actually happened in the nights we were there. And that was just such a rarity. And then to really put the cherry on top of the whole thing, our client was this older man who was a security guard for the building when it had fallen into disrepair. He was there like they were trying to repurpose this old hospital. Nothing came of it. There was a volcano, kind of destroyed the whole landscape there. But he would tell people that he would hear American soldiers, yelling out in English. He would see this white apparition moving around in the basement, and he would hear these footsteps. And people said he was a drunk. People said he was crazy. And because he had nobody else to back him up, he started doubting himself. Mm-hmm. When we sat down and did the evidence review with him, genuine tears came out of this man, and it was just such a great thing to really, we all say we want to help the clients, and we do. We want to educate them. We don't want people to feel scared in their homes. But it was always kind of a disconnect for me with the international show, because it's like I'm helping a huge castle that has a multi-million-dollar tourism industry, But okay, maybe we're explaining things, or maybe we're bringing history alive. We're helping to keep the place alive, But to actually sit with somebody and see that this old building that really was filled with holes and water damage and useless, it still meant something to this guy. That was, to me, there's really just the best part of the whole thing.
Yeah. I think that's what most of us are in it for, just to help the client and really know that, okay, what I just did helped. It meant something, as opposed to just getting some cool EVPs and maybe
a
picture.
Yeah, exactly. To go out and put this on Instagram, this would be great.
And some people, at the end of the day, just want to make sure or have confirmation that they aren't nuts. If they've got things going on, they just want other people to witness.
Right.
Like, tell me I'm not nuts,
Yeah.
Which
it goes a long way. It really helps.
It does. Especially when you get these clients who contact you that are at their wits' end, where they're like, my family thinks I'm crazy, I'm distracted at work, it's affecting my finances, and your heart breaks for them. And that look of relief on their face when they're like, okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I can figure this out. Yeah,
it's nice. Indeed. Makes you feel good at the end of the day to do some good,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. Britt, I think you have the next question unless you would like me to ask.
Yeah. Do you feel that the energy or activity overseas is different than here in the U.S. due to there being a longer history typically over there, or more intense?
I kind of feel like in terms of we're looking for residual type things, the well's a little deeper just because the place has been around a little bit longer. As far as intensity of interaction, it always seems to just depend day to day on the place, on the night that you're there. So that's always kind of been even keel. It's always hit or miss wherever you go. But it was nice. It was really such a blessing to be able to kind of, immerse yourself in the culture of these different countries for 2 weeks at a time. To stay in this old castle and hear these stories. It was really amazing, So sometimes even when the evidence wasn't that great and the case was kind of a snooze, there was still something just really special about being there. But just same here in America too, being in New England or going down to Florida where there was some, Spanish settlements early on. The older places, you get a little bit more for sure, especially the native areas and things like that. There's a little bit more to look for, I think. But I've been very blessed to have had the opportunities all over the place to do so.
Definitely. Question from Ronnie. Is there any famous place to investigate that you would second guess going to? Oh, interesting. So maybe a place that doesn't have the greatest reputation?
No, I'm always up for anything. I was warned against going to the Hinsdale House because bad things happen after the Hinsdale House. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. And I had a great case at the Hinsdale House. And then driving home the next morning, a deer landed on my car, the rental car. So I just sent a picture to Dan. I'm like, well, I don't know about the Hinsdale curse, but it might be right. But I'd still go back there, without any problem. I thought it was a great case, great location, really cool. There's some things I just think are just in poor taste that people have brought up about doing, things with 9/11 sites in New York or some of the concentration camps, those kind of things. I just feel like there will be no amount of time that'll pass where it'll be okay to do those kind of things.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to do that. The only place I don't want to go back to, I would if I had to, but the Villisca Axe Murder House, And honestly, the night I went there was perfect. I got there late because my plane got delayed. But like I got there like an hour into the investigation, and it was pouring rain and lightning. It was perfect, like horror movie stuff. And for me, nothing happened that I witnessed or was a part of that I felt was paranormal. I do think the place does lend itself to have that activity, but the stories of what actually happened there really messed with my head so much. Like I remember coming home and like for months, like on months, even years, I had a hard time some nights going to bed because I was like, well, I was out cutting the lawn for a while and the garage door was open. Somebody could have came in and snuck up in the house like during that time because it was so then I'd have to go through like systematically go from the basement up to the attic to make sure no one was hiding in the house because that kind of stuff really freaks me out. Like the living like are really creepy. So like the axe murder house like left me. I told Johnny Houser that runs the place. Like it just left me with such just felt like a stain on my mind. I was like I just don't want to go back in there anymore.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of an offshoot question then to that. I know you're a spiritual person, but do you do any type of protections or do you feel the need to before investigations, like psychically, energetically?
I like to think that Jesus and I roll together pretty well. I mean, Lord knows I'm not perfect by far, but I try my best. Still screwing up, regularly, but we keep trying to make progress. And for me, Christianity is what makes sense. But, there are many years where I was not under like the Christian understanding. And I studied Buddhism and Taoism and a lot of Eastern philosophy. And I found a lot of great comforts there and understandings too. I really believe that all are one. But for me personally, like before I go into a place, I don't do anything special. I used to always have a rosary with me. One day it broke. I put it in my drawer. I never fixed it. It's still in my drawer. I have my own little ritual every time I get my truck in the morning. Like I always cross myself. And I have a little medal that I kiss my fingers and touch before I drive. And I've always done that, since I was 16. But that's just like my daily thing, like prayer is a part of my daily life. So I don't do anything special when I go to a case or anything else. So it's just normal operation, I guess.
Another question from Tim. How much does the environment of location play into a haunting, like storms, humidity, pressure, and space weather, for instance?
So that's a great question, Tim. A lot of people get tied up in these things, and there definitely are some things that we can look for, with rain and such and different storm pressures. We get the changes of ions and things, and people have brought ion generators in to try to replicate this. And we love the whole idea of like, when October comes around, the thinning of the veil and all that. And the only thing that I've ever noticed, like that I actually went out of my way to try to chart and to look into, was the moon phases. And a lot of people say, well, the full moon. And I worked on an ambulance for several years. And there's a lot of crazy things that happen under a full moon. So that whole like lunacy thing, there's a tie-in there. But when it comes to the paranormal, the thing that I've seen to notice is that like, during the waxing and waning phases of the moon, which is when the gravitational pull is strongest on the Earth's crust, it seems to be that we maybe get a little bit more activity on those nights, or at least I've had better luck on those nights. Now, whether that means it's releasing like residual energy, like the idea of, when we're like restoring a house, we're disrupting that energy, maybe that's happening there. But that's the only thing I've ever noticed, like this seems to have something to it. But it's hard enough to schedule investigations anyway, so you don't always have time to check the lunar phases. But it is just something that I've noticed that I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah. And also the humidity, pressure, and solar flares and stuff like that can affect your equipment while you're on an investigation as well.
Yeah, the whole solar flare thing is crazy too. It's like they're really growing in intensity. I'm like, at any point, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, you ladies seem a lot younger than I am, but I feel like, I was talking to my buddy about this today. It's like, I feel like when I was a kid riding my bike, I thought that for sure the sun was like a yellow color. And now it's just like this white ball that burns in my eyes when I look up. It's like, I don't know what happened. Like you look at video from the 70s and I know like, yeah, like, the Kodachrome and like the technology and filming and taking images is different. Yeah. But I don't remember my eyes hurting so much when I looked up. Now, I don't know if it's age or what, but it seems like a white ball of light that really hurts.
I don't think we're much younger than you, or maybe Brittany. Brittany's the youngest of us.
Brittany's the little one?
Brittany's the best.
Aww.
I'll admit, the sun definitely bothers me more. So I might be an age thing, or maybe it's our atmosphere kind of like getting messed up.
Or maybe it's because we're all in the paranormal, so we're used to being in the dark all the time. So now it's like the sun's like we're all become vampires somehow.
Definitely. I
Just
find
came off the night shift.
Yeah.
Sabrina gets used to being in the dark all the time.
Oh, girl.
Even like being home in the pandemic, I find just when I'm sitting at home, I have very dim lighting on. So when I go out anywhere at night, like headlights and stuff, I'm like, oh, like a vampire. I'm like, oh my God.
That night vision thing is awful. I remember specifically I was going to do a college lecture in Illinois, and I was so excited because the guy that was putting it together was like head of the drama department, and he's having this huge party. He had like all these like fancy made like monster themed hors d'oeuvres. It was like a fog machine, all this stuff. I'm like, this is gonna be awesome. And I'm driving to it from the lecture area, and I'm like, it was raining and night, and I'm like, why can't I see anything anymore? Like, I felt like it was like all of a sudden just something like switched off in my eyes. I'm like,
Yes.
now night blindness. Like, this is wonderful.
I think the headlights have just gotten much brighter.
Oh, it's
The
awful.
LED ones.
It
Yeah.
sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rainy night, I might as well just stay home because I can't see anything.
I feel like, growing up when we had the old school headlights, we always used to get so mad at the deer when they'd come in front of the car and just stare at the headlights and be like literally deer in headlights. And now I do that. I'm like, whoa.
I just imagine Gail on the road.
Me too.
Yeah, that's me. That's why I don't go walking at night,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Just these things, you know. I was telling my friend the other night when we were talking about the deer story from Hinsdale. The worst part of the whole thing was we're very fortunate. My buddy Cody and I were very fortunate because the deer had jumped up. So because there's deer here, so I'm used to it. But it was an elevated road in Friendship, New York, upstate, and the deer must have been down in the valley in the gulch, and it jumped up. So I never saw it until it landed right on the hood. And the hood just popped up, and it was like NASCAR. It's like, oh, I know how to do this. Like, slow down, move over. I didn't get freaked out, but I didn't know what happened. I just let the latch let go, and then I look, and there's like deer, like fur everywhere. And sure enough, it's like behind us, and just gets up, looks, and walks away. I'm like, what the heck happened? But then I called the police, and like an idiot, and also because I love Christmas, I'm like, a reindeer landed on my car. The guy's like, what? I'm like, a reindeer? I'm like, oh, they don't really call them reindeer. Oh,
Fair.
so stupid. I mean, here I am in my 40s, and I called it a reindeer.
But maybe it was if it fell from the sky.
Just the flying lessons were going on that day. It just didn't work out.
It
Not gonna
happened.
make this play team, buddy.
Well, I guess getting back to the paranormal.
Yeah, let's do that sometime. Fine.
Yeah, great segue.
A lot better than mine.
Yeah, Sabrina's weird stories of S&M were strange.
I can't.
The family show, Sabrina.
Yeah, we're pros. We're pros at this. We're great. So we touched a couple times before. We talked about some TV shows, some misconceptions, and Ghost Hunters International, Ghost Nation now.
Yeah.
Those are all very client-driven TV shows that kind of shows the real side of paranormal investigating. However, you do have some of those shows on TV right now that really focus on the scarier aspects or maybe more demonic and even, provoking the spirit on those shows.
Yeah.
What is your thoughts on that? And do you think this could possibly change in the future in terms of helping people to understand the paranormal better?
I mean, so you got to have the balance of it, right? Because you've got some people that like it one way and some that like it the other. I personally, I know that there is a darker side to things that's always out there, but just like in this life, I choose not to focus upon that. I give it its credence, I give it its respect, and I'm aware of what I'm doing, but I try to focus on the positive side of things all the time. I don't like pop out scary things. I don't even like haunted house attractions. Like I won't go to those. I don't like slasher movies. Like it's crazy, but I just don't like that type of stuff. So those shows really aren't for me. Now I know a lot of people that investigate that way and like to do that kind of stuff. And if that's what they like, that's fine. Provoking may have its place, if you're really trying to work with I guess maybe a difficult spirit or whatever. But I kind of feel like there's always a better way to get that interaction. Because you may get slapped, you may get scratched, you may get pushed. but it's a one-off thing, and then the conversation's done. Like, there's nothing else to learn from there outside of, look what happened to me, and like, yeah, look what happened to you. And that, you know, it's good if that's what you're looking for, but that's just not my approach to it. I like, honestly, if I watch the shows, I love just like the ghost story shows, like with the awful recreations. And then sometimes like the talking head interview with like some investigator I know. I'm like, I'll sit there with my wife. I'm like, oh, I know him. I know her, you know, but like, I just like to hear the stories. Like, that's to me, and I don't know, maybe working in the field for so long, like I try to watch, you know, the shows to support my friends and stuff, or at least tweet about it, you know, make sure people know it's on. But it's like, you know, working in oral surgery all day. Do I want to come home and watch a TV show where people pull teeth all day? Like, I don't want to do that. I already did that for 8 hours. Yeah. So give me a ghost story or something. I like watching those a little bit more than I like watching some of the investigative type shows.
Yeah, definitely.
Very nice.
But I think there's room for, you know, there's room for both, but it's just, you got to be respectful. That's all.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, through your time in dealing with the paranormal, being on paranormal TV shows, I'm sure you've had some interesting guests, some famous guests.
Oh yeah.
What guest was your favorite?
So I am a huge wrestling fan.
Okay.
So I was able to work with several wrestlers on some of the live Halloween shows, and I get to work with Mike the Miz, who's still very active in WWE. So that was fantastic. And also because he never broke kayfabe, he stayed in his wrestling persona and character the whole time. I don't think they knew how to work with that. So I was investigating with Rob Demarest, and we weren't getting any activities, so they kind of relegated us to the trailer. Like, we can't use you anymore, nothing's happening. And then they like sent Mike there too, which was great because then I could just sit there and talk wrestling with him the whole time. So I was over the moon.
And this might date me a little bit. I remember in college watching him on The Real World. That's
crazy.
And now when he became a wrestler, I was like, oh my God, he made it, because he was trying to do that on The Real World. You know, in character, The Miz.
And now he's got his own reality shows and all kinds of stuff on top of it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So funny.
So with ghost hunters having started off doing like residential cases and helping clients, do you think you'll ever go back into that aspect of the paranormal, or maybe start your own thing?
I still do that locally in terms of like just working with clients and such. I mean, nothing last year or yet this year, but in 2019, we're still doing home cases and such. Usually just work with my friend Cody Desmian, who's actually been on a couple of episodes of Ghost Nation now. Work with him, work with Jay's daughter Satori, but I usually just keep it quiet and keep it close to home, but still involved in that kind of thing. And I did have some TV show pitches back in 2019, but unfortunately I was told it was not scary enough. So so what are you going to do? You know, there'll be a market for it at some point. It just wasn't what they were looking for then. So that's okay.
Yeah. I feel like we're getting to a time where people want more of that positivity and they're looking for that, you know, less scary part of life. There's enough really like scary things happening in like day to day. We don't need it at night too.
Yeah, happy escape once in a while. That'd be good. Where's the Unicorn and Rainbow show? I won't watch that for like 5 hours.
Right.
Where's the ghost show where they make you like breakfast in the morning? You know, and where you wake up and magically like the ghosts make you pancakes.
I love breakfast, but I don't like getting up. That's the hardest part of it. I'm like,
me neither.
Brunch works so well for me. Plus, it often comes with champagne, so it's making more sense.
Yes, I concur.
Brunch is great
all day.
Although we did get one of those Mickey waffle makers, and now life is great again. Like, making the Mickey waffles, that's fun. Yeah. So I have that every day. And I put vanilla in the batter because, again, fancy. Makes it taste good. Look at this, cooking tips. You didn't think you were going to get that tonight. You never know.
Yes.
That's awesome. Another question from Ronnie. Okay, wrestling question. Attitude Era or WWE era?
Well, I mean, both have their strong points. Storyline currently is quite a struggle. Honestly, for me, it didn't get better than the old WWF era of like the late 80s. Like, that was my favorite time. You know, Brutus Beefcake, The Ultimate Warrior, WCW doing their own thing. My favorite time of wrestling was an earlier time. So, but I've watched it straight through, you know, take a little hiatus here and there, but Still watching it currently.
Nice. Awesome.
I love it.
So now that we've kind of covered the more traditional paranormal aspects, and we talked a little bit earlier about the outside of the box paranormal aspects, maybe we can focus on that a little bit more.
Sure.
So referencing aliens, cryptozoology, all that fun stuff. Do you believe, well, you already said these entities exist in your opinion, but have you had any personal experiences with them?
So I've done a couple of things where I've had some experiences with these things. So I was doing a pilot for, I have to take this off. I apologize, but it's super hot in here. For those of you who just joined the show, you didn't catch us in our pre-show talking. I had to turn the heat up because we have a hairless cat and she got cold and I felt bad. Well, I'm very hot. So anyhow, I was doing a pilot for a show that actually ended up becoming Haunted Highways with Jack Osborne. And it was, I write about it in my book, What's Next. It was originally my show concept. It was called Paranormal Highway. It was myself and Angela Alderman, who was on GHI with me. And we were going to go and explore, the paranormal along haunted routes and this kind of thing. And so she and I went out and we filmed in New Mexico, I think it was. And it was New Mexico. And it was this area where there was a Native American land, this house where they had activity, and the story of skinwalkers up on this ridge. And I'm not a huge fan of the thermal camera. I think it's really good for debunking things. I've seen a couple of things that don't make sense to me, but I have a hard time believing a lot of the stuff I see with it. But this time I go out and we're walking, and one of the guides, this young Native American guy, showed me around where he said he had interaction with the skinwalker. And it's just about, I don't know, it's not too late. It's just maybe after dusk. As I'm scanning the area, something that I could not see with my own eyes or when one of us would walk up to it, the only way I can describe it is everyone knows, when you go to the car dealership, there's that wacky tube man thing they used to use. Mm-hmm. It was like that on the thermal camera, but I could see where it was supposed to be. I could tell by the geographical, the features, the rocks and boulders, it should be right there, but I'm seeing nothing. But it's moving like that. And this gentleman and a couple other people that we talked to said they believe that is the spiritual form of these skinwalker type beings. I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know what to think of it. I was like, I don't know, is it a heat plume or what? But it was changing color so crazy. Reset the thermal camera, put it back on, and we're still getting the same thing, So that was kind of an odd, unbelievable, unexplainable type thing. And then they had us reshoot it, and they had me shoot with Jack Osborne. And Jack was really great. And super embarrassing, though, as we're driving up to another location to film. We're out in Cali. I'm driving the rental car. He's with me. We're just chatting, hanging out. First time we met. And I'm listening to the radio, and an Aussie song comes on. And just mindlessly, I'm singing because that's what I do. And then I just got real sheepish and quiet because I'm like, oh, I am butchering his father's song right in front of him. I just feel like the biggest idiot right now. But he was really cool. And then they had me filming a couple other people. And then they ended up just keeping me as an off-screen producer. And I didn't even end up doing anything. They just basically took it away from me. Nothing to do with Jack or anything. He was great. Just production. Just Hollywood, blah, blah, blah. But it's fine. That's fine. But it was a cool little experience anyway. And then Cody and I were coming back from a library gig probably about 2 years ago now, maybe 2.5. And we're coming through Massachusetts. We're on the Mass Turnpike. And all of a sudden in the lights in the sky, it looks, like the shape of the old Tiffany lamp. It was like that. It was super bright. It looked like you just turned on. What the heck is that? And it's not a plane because it literally just turned on in the sky. And it's not going anywhere. It's just hovering. And then it shot off really fast. And but it stood there for a while. And we're driving, we're just trying to record it with his camera, with his phone camera. So it's just a white blur. So it was garbage. But it was awesome. And then the first time I've ever seen anything that I thought was of UFO nature, I was leaving a college lecture. I was driving through, I think it was Indiana. It all becomes a blur after a while, but I'm pretty sure it was Indiana. And it was the same kind of thing. It was this long road. It was nighttime. There was nothing else going on. I'm listening to the radio. And it looked like this light just turned on in the sky. But this was different. It was like the arch of an eyebrow. And it went from red to white. and then it just like shot off to one side, and then it was gone. So I do believe there's more out there than we're aware of. There's been a lot more steps toward disclosure. I don't think they're ever going to tell us anything. But at least now, the Navy and Air Force are saying, yeah, we've got the Tic Tac video. We know there are, craft that we can't explain. There's been a lot of cool documentaries that have come out lately. So I think we're getting closer to learning more about that kind of stuff too. But when it comes to crypto creatures, when it comes to UFOs, when it comes to aliens, I think we would be very small-minded and very egotistical to think that, no, none of that exists. We're the only things here. And it would also be really sad because we're screwing stuff up left and right. Like we need a Hail Mary pass. Maybe like the aliens can help us or something.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, I actually have a PG segue.
Okay.
Do you believe that there's a way to communicate with other entities such as aliens and interdimensional beings?
So, doing some of the things like you referenced, like with Hellyer, like doing some of the ghost box method where you kind of cover up everything else, like they call the Estes method, using things in maybe new ways. I think we're still capable of doing that. If Frank thought that he could speak to aliens using these devices, maybe we can as well. Just training and using your own consciousness, we're able to do some things like that. I like to think everything could be in the realm of possibility. And you're never going to prove everything to everybody, and that's okay. And if you're doing it just to try to prove stuff to people, I think you're doing it for the wrong reason too, Right. I always felt, for me, really, like dealing with the paranormal was a very spiritual experience. It was coming that close to the afterlife. It was almost touching the other side, and knowing that to be a reality, which sometimes, as you ladies probably know, it really is painful sometimes when you come off a really good experience and then go back to the day job or go back to watching people like fight in line at Walmart. It's like, oh, there's so much more, but like, they'll never see it, When we get to the idea of like young souls versus old souls, sometimes you see people like, oh, you're probably new here, huh? You haven't figured this out. But, we can't judge. We can just try to help each other along, and who knows?
Right.
There are people out there, I don't know if you've heard the term starseed. These are people who believe that we have more than one lifetime and a previous one took place on another planet. So they weren't always an earthling. They were at some point. And it's funny because their point of view sometimes, they get very confused by our earth mentality and what we find to be important, like the concept of money, it like boggles them. And I think that's part of kind of what you're talking about, where you just look at people sometimes and go, why?
Like you don't get it. This doesn't matter. This is so inconsequential, the things that we fight about, the things that we like rip each other down apart. Like at the end of the day, does this really matter? Like it doesn't, I just choose to go the other way at that point. I'm like, I'm not going to burn up my energy like just fighting over nonsense. It just, like really like pick and choose the things that are that important that you really want to fight for. Like big things of social injustice or people being harmed or you believing that this photo is a ghost or not. I really don't.
Yep, definitely.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you mentioned, before as a child, you saw a shadow figure, a shadow person. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you went into what you thought shadow people were. Can't remember right now.
No, I didn't talk too much about it, but that's okay. Let's wrap up your question and we'll throw it in there.
So what do you think they are? And also, what kind of advice would you give to someone who maybe is going through that or has a child that has seen such things?
I think the main thing is just, try to be calm about it. It's a little off-putting, or unsettling the first time you come across it because it's not normal. So anything that's not normal automatically gives us like a weird feeling. Like, wait, what is this? Why is this here? But strip away the Hollywood planted seed of this is negative, this is a demon, this is horrible. Like, give it a chance to see what it is first, And for me, when I was a kid, I was petrified of it. Like I said, I didn't want to see it again. But as I get older and I've had opportunity to interact with these type of things in various places, I don't feel any fear from them at all. I'm very excited when I come across something like that now. As far as the true shadow figures, like we would describe them in the shape of a person, but just shadowy in nature. They usually look like gray vapor. I've never recorded any audio with them. I noticed that they seem to move very, very quickly. I've always felt very peaceful around them. And some people say, maybe they're just here to observe. Maybe they're just like watchers. I hear the term a lot. They seem to be different from, what they call Hat Man, which is like the shadow figure, but he's got like a brimmed hat. I've never seen that, but that seems to be something else different. A lot of people wonder if they're aliens or something. I can't say for sure that they're not, but if they are, they don't tie in with things like we talk about, like the grays, or, the tall, slender ones, or even the little ones that people see. It doesn't quite fit there, but it doesn't mean it couldn't be some other type of being. One of the lectures that I do, I kind of story arc from the beginning. Photo of that house and having that visitation, being scared as a child, to learning and growing and trying to find out more about the paranormal, and finding my way through these buildings and finding my way onto a television show and traveling the world. And when it's all said and done, I still don't know what it is. But I realize now the more important thing isn't that I know what it is, but I feel like I know why it was there. I really feel like it put me on a different path in my life. If it wasn't for that interaction, I'm not here even talking to you ladies right now. Like, there wouldn't be a reason for me to be, because I would have never done this work. But if I never do this work, I'm not sitting in a hotel room somewhere, across the globe on MySpace. Yes, we're dating ourselves, but when people are moving beyond asking me ghost questions and asking me about life advice, and then going from there to, telling me personal things about how they cut themselves and how they feel about that. And then doing my work with suicide prevention, motivational work. Now I've traveled around, I've spoken in middle schools and high schools, I've done corporate lectures, and I know that at least for a handful of people, I've made somewhat of a difference. And if it's not for that shadow figure, whatever that thing may be, visiting me, I never do any of that. So it becomes fabric of the universe stuff. It becomes how all our lives are interwoven. And that's where I realized that it doesn't matter what it is, it's why it was there. And I feel like that's why it was there.
Yeah, that actually resonates a lot with a conversation that we had previously with an experienced investigator, and we were asking her, all these very similar questions, like, what do you think of shadow people are? What do you think of elementals? What do you think of that and this? And she was like, if you're a client-based team, when you're walking into the home, don't worry about the what, worry about the why, like you just said, because the way to help the client is to find out why and see if you can work from there. Okay, what it is could be important, but more importantly is the why they're there.
Yeah.
So that's super poignant for sure.
No, very good way to look at it for sure.
Yeah, and because most of the time, honestly, let's be real, we never find out the what.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, you can't. I mean, very few times you get an EVP or something that's going to be strong enough to tell you exactly who it is or whatever. So we're mostly trying to just give our best guesstimate of what we're encountering. But yeah, figure out why it's there and trying to help people figure out how to deal with it, or the things we can control, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. And you touched a little bit on like the fabric of the universe, the intertwining. So taking that a step further, do you believe in like alternate dimensions where maybe these shadow people are from a nearby, dimension that's just peeking in?
So, yeah, I think there is that potential. Now, I'm no astrophysicist or anything like that. I have to use the Starfinder app just to tell me what the heck I'm looking at up there. But I'm interested in that kind of thing, But I do kind of feel like, and I bring this to a biblical understanding, but I'm not trying to baptize anybody. In the Dead Sea Scrolls that were important books at the time that they were written for the religion, they unfortunately fell out of favor because of the ideas of men at the time. Because for me personally, I believe that the Bible is inspired by God, but written by man, and thus obviously corrupt. But some of these books that were important then were disregarded because they didn't go with the political, ideas at the time. Some of these things have great knowledge in them, and they believe that the group that may have been closest with Christ was the Essenes, and they believe the Essenes were the ones that wrote these Dead Sea Scrolls. And in some of them, I've gone and seen an exhibit they had at the Boston Museum of Science some years back. In some of them, they talk about heaven. They talk about the spiritual world being not far from where we are, just kind of like a shift from where we are. And that's where I start to wonder, it's like maybe the afterlife, this other dimension, whatever it may be, it's not that far away. And some like top mediums and psychics have spoken to this, saying that the afterlife is just, like several feet away from where we are now. Like they try to measure it with a linear concept that we understand, but it really doesn't match up. But the idea that it's not that far away and that maybe it bleeds over once in a while, right. We have the ability to cross over, I think, which is really impressive. And I think that's a wonderful way to think about it. Even if it's not true, still a great concept, and it's better than demons and darkness and everybody's in hell with fire and brimstone.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up because literally right here next to me is a similar book about the Gnostic Gospels.
Oh, okay.
And this is basically, other prophets that, like you said back then during the political times when they're trying to figure out what coincided with their beliefs,
right?
Potential prophets that didn't make the cut for the Bible. So this was like their versions
the
of
Gospel of Mary and the Book of Enoch, like all these things.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, no, these are garbage. Like, well, no, at the time they were not garbage. It's just over years they've become regarded as such. So it's history controls the narrative. So we see that now too. But this is the way things go.
Yeah. It brings me back to my nerdy side, which is Doctor Who and wibbly wobbly timely wimely, where everything is all over the place at once and crisscrosses, and sometimes it crosses it at a time where we get to see it happen, and it makes you go, "What is that?"
What just happened there? Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. And we could definitely go down that rabbit hole, but we only have a half hour left, so let's not say we did. Maybe another time. So we just have a couple more general questions, and then we'll wrap up with some more fun questions. And so earlier, you've mentioned several times now how spiritual you are, and I have down here that you're actually the founder of Patch Ministries. Is that still
that
something?
Unfortunately is defunct now.
Oh no!
No, it's okay. It was just a name I had given to my Christian lectures, which I still do Christian lectures, just not under that banner. Because then all of a sudden people wanted to do donations, and I was like, no, I'm not set up for donations. I don't want donations. Like, just donate to something you want to donate to. And so when I realized people started to think it was that type of thing, I was like, let's just not use the name and just do what I do anyway.
Okay. So, well, with that in mind, then, have you found that impacts either your techniques or your relationships in the paranormal due to the differing views that are out there?
I think it impacts some perception of me sometimes, but it doesn't change the way I approach what I do. Like I said, I've studied a lot of different religions. I appreciate them. So when I go to do an investigation, I'm very, what's there? What are we talking about? Who are we talking to? Why are they there? That's the important thing for me. And I do get, I think I probably get the things people seem to dislike about me the most, outside of like season 2 and 3, Dustin, which was edited to seem like he only cared about his hair. I think the other thing people don't like is they'll say, well, you call yourself a Christian and yet you do the devil's work. I'm like, do you know what I really do? Because I don't do what you think I do. And I think that's where I need to like explain to people, like, listen, I don't look to spirit for advice, for guidance. Like, I'm not making my life decisions based on my investigation sessions. I'm just documenting what's around. And, I point out to them several things in the Bible, which I won't bore you with. I don't know chapter and verse, but, I know the books that they appear in, where Jesus shows up and he's walking on water and people are first afraid thinking he's a ghost. When he first comes back from the resurrection, doubting Thomas wants to put his hand in his side because he can't believe he's actually there. There's a lot of references to ghosts. The Bible is full of apparitions coming back to talk to people. And Jesus, even at one point in the unclean spirit, goes and gives people permission to cast out evil spirits in his name. I don't do any of that. Call somebody else. But what I do is in the umbrella of safety and normalcy, as far as I'm concerned, But I keep everything very open when I do my investigations. I don't work just under one understanding or another. But if anything, I think I just angered people about it. But okay.
Sorry.
Puppy.
Ava.
You need to mute Sabrina.
I'm so sorry. She heard like a pounding by the door. I think it's somebody in the neighborhood just came home.
Mm.
No worries.
Oh.
At least your animal wasn't on camera bathing himself. That I tried to.
I told you he would. Did I not call it?
The first 10 minutes of this Q&A, all of a sudden he just feet up in the air. And nice.
Diane jumped on the table and started eating the wreath at like an hour and 15 minutes. She was asleep the whole time.
Okay.
That's so funny.
Is that the dog or the cat?
That's the cat. And
Cat.
she does not belong on the table. Trust me, if the dog was on the table, you would know.
I love it.
It's like, oh, that's a shepherd. Yes, that's not a
Yes,
small dog.
she's a big dog.
Looks
Sorry
like
about that.
Thanks. We're all animal lovers here. Ronnie, seeing what you do with motivational speaking and helping with the suicide hotline, is if there is anyone watching this now or watching this later on YouTube, is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Oh, sure. I appreciate the question, Ronnie. I think I appreciate the opportunity, really. One of the things that, I put this in all my lectures, my paranormal lectures, my motivational lectures, the Christian ones, the ones I do in the Christmas time. I really feel like out of everything, the thing that I know to be most true is that we're all humans just now. We are spirits going through this human experience. So we're not from here and we don't stay here. So this earth is like this little island home for us. But while we're here, I think it's so important for us to kind of reach out for each other, to look out for one another, to lift each other up, to laugh together, to cry together, and try to make people feel a little better about things. And sometimes that's, allowing for people to make mistakes. I kind of feel like right now we're in a heightened time of negativity and judgment all the time, where once somebody does something that's a little bit on the line, like I was in the store the other day with this poor woman that's been back there, I'm sure, God knows how many hours, working at the drugstore, at the pharmacy. Her mask was down just like, this much under her nose. And the woman in front of me in line starts approaching and goes, "You need to pull that up. You need to pull that up. You shouldn't even be wearing it." I'm like, why are we yelling at this? Like, if you really need to say something, just be like, "Oh, your mask just slipped down a little bit." If you have to be the person to say something, just find a nice way to say it. Pointing fingers and that's automatically, fists are up. Give each other a little bit of room to make mistakes here. Whether you agree or don't agree with things, sometimes it doesn't really. It's not a life or death situation here. We don't need to fight about everything. I don't agree with everything that I see going on all the time. I don't fight with people about it. I go to the gym, I put my mask on, I do the thing. If I see some guy working out next to me without his mask on, it doesn't really bother me. I don't say anything. But we don't need to fight all the time. It's like when you're driving. If somebody starts to come over out of their lane a little bit, you just beep the horn. You don't lay on the horn and give them the finger and start screaming right away. Maybe you do. You should do that. But give each other a little bit of room in life to make mistakes. And if you're someone who's going through this life and you feel that you're on the other end of that, and that there's a lot of pain that's always coming your way, I get it. I feel that a lot. This human experience is not easy for us because, again, we're not from here. We don't stay here. And that's why this is so difficult. This is a book I really need to read, but there's a quote that I love from it that I have, and it's in my my YouTube series, my Hey Get a Minute series. And I believe it's called, if I remember the name of the book correctly, it's A Victorian Home for Wayward Girls, which is a great title just by itself. But there's a line in it that says, the reason I saw it, because the line is misattributed to the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland. But it's not from that. It's from this book. So the line is, "For you are a very real thing." No, wait, time out. Hold on. Yes, "For you are a very real thing in a very fake world, and that is why I believe you're in so much pain." And I really feel that, it really, I may have screwed up a word or two, but give me a little room. It's okay. I really feel that really hits me at the core the most, and I think that might help a lot of people. It's okay to feel pain in this world, and we can't just have the sweet without the sour. We have to experience all of it because that's part of our human experience. But know that when you're in that feeling and you wonder why things don't seem right, there's nothing wrong with you. You're actually really in tune with who you are in a different level. And maybe other people in this world don't get that. It doesn't make them right or wrong, but give yourself a little room to feel that way and to know that it's okay to not feel okay in those times, and just make sure you reach out to somebody, either a friend, a family member, maybe if you got a coworker you're close to, and if not, the foundation. Every night on Twitter, for God knows how many years, my last post is always the phone number for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They're a great organization. They're very transparent with their donations. And I always ask people to retweet that number, repost that number, share that number. And if you need it, call them, text them. They're a great, great group. And I think they help a lot of people. So I went down a long path with that.
But I think people need it, though. They need the reminder. They need to be reminded why. And I think that quote is just so perfect because, you know, it'll resonate with somebody that, you know what, maybe it'll give them a different perspective. Like, yes, I am super real in this fake world. Let me reevaluate why I'm reacting this way to it, you know? Right. So, and maybe it'll, instead of them thinking about the dark hole that they're in, they could scoot back upwards and start thinking of other things to pull them out of that.
That's it. I often tell people, Sabrina, just like you said, I often tell people, you know, because I always tell them, I'm not a therapist, but, you know, until you can talk to somebody, start to make a list of all the little things in this world that you like the stupid things. Like, I like the smell of fresh cut grass. Like, I like, you know, ghost stories. I like this. Just keep working on that list. And the more you start to work on that list, you're training your brain to think more positively, to look upon the bright side of things. And you start to realize that guy that cut you off in traffic, the person that gave you a hard time, that family member who's mean, those things don't add up to all the beautiful things that you really do. But, all right, one more quote. Fight Club. Fight Club, which is along the same lines, one of my favorite books, one of my favorite.
We don't talk about Fight Club. That's the first rule.
Yes.
Just broke it.
Chuck Palahniuk is one of my favorite authors, and there's a great bit in the book and in the movie where Tyler Durden says, you know, we trap ourselves in these lives working jobs that we hate to make money, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't even like. I was like, wow, if that doesn't sum up this dang life sometimes, you know, it's like, it's enough with like trying to do all that. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, we do it. I don't know. Again, distracted and in debt and in just dystopia. Like, we just got to break that damn cycle and realize the things that really matter aren't the things, but it's the moments that we share with people. It's not even the destination, but that journey and the time we spend together. Good times.
Yes.
Definitely. Celebrating people as they are. And I think we all know, especially in the paranormal world, you meet some interesting characters.
Oh, for sure.
And you just have to sit back and say, you know what, if you're happy and you're not hurting anybody, be you.
Yep.
Bravo.
That's the key thing. Like, you're not harming anybody else. Like, you know, if you believe there's a unicorn that comes out of your closet every night at 2:52 a.m. and you have pizza with it, awesome. I don't need to see proof of that. Just enjoy it. I would love unicorn pizza. That seems like that should be a thing.
That should be.
Like, are we dyeing the pepperoni different colors? I don't know what we're doing, but we could do something with it.
You just invented it. Now it's going to go viral. We're all
going to be a thing. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Well, speaking of pizza, Sabrina had a very important question about a different kind of pie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not a big baked goods person, but I did a little research on you outside of the paranormal.
I feel I know where this is going.
And something totally jumped out at me, and I told Brittany that if she did not add this question, it would break my little heart.
Yeah.
And it's a two-parter.
All right. Oh, good.
What's your favorite pie? And are you cereal than milk or milk than cereal?
I am a pumpkin pie fan first and foremost.
Me too.
I like to cover it with at least half a can of whipped cream.
Who wouldn't?
You need to enjoy this dang thing, you know. But I'm not a pie snob. Like, I'll eat, you know, I just finished a cherry pie the other day. Like, I like it. I bake a lot. I like to cook. And then I put my cereal in before the milk because I like to ration it. I feel like I don't like to waste a lot of milk. And if you put too much in there, it gets soggy too quick. So the ratio has to be just right. And it's cereal first. Blueberry, preferably. Christmas Captain Crunch, a close second. And yeah, all good things. Although right now I've been hooked on Dunkin' Donuts cereal.
Oh my God.
They have a mocha latte cereal. It's like you're chewing coffee and then you get to drink the milk after.
And then you shake for an hour, I'm sure.
Oh, it's amazing.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, they have not marketed it enough.
Yeah. They clearly didn't, because in New Jersey we are a Dunkin' state. Like, everybody runs on Dunkin' in Jersey, and I've never heard of that.
Go on Amazon, whatever it takes. Make sure you experience it. It's wonderful.
Tim has a question. Has anyone told you that you remind them of actor Harland Williams?
I believe so. I can't remember what the heck he was in now, but he's one of the names that come across the bow every once in a while. And I feel like currently that's the one I get more. At one time it was Keanu Reeves, and I was very flattered, and all of a sudden that stopped. But yeah, I've gotten Ed Norton a couple of times, which I never saw.
That's what it is.
A couple of times. The doodle of the Dorito guy, I used to get him. Oh, okay, I'll take that. He's handsome. Yes, that's good stuff.
So funny.
That's great. I don't know why I'm so distracted by the cereal question.
It's a wonderful thing.
I overanalyze food. Everybody knows I'm a bit of a foodie, and when it comes to cereal, because you mentioned it getting soggy too fast, this was my OCD-ness as a child. I put the cereal in, but then I pushed it to the corners, poured the milk in, and then I would push the cereal down as I ate it. So
Brittany,
that's a good technique. Well, that's good.
Interesting.
There's this company out there. They make a product called Spoonies. So it's Spoon YZ, and it's got a smiley face in the bottom of the spoon. So when you eat it, some of the milk goes through, so you don't get too much milk with each bite.
Oh,
it's a game changer, let me tell you.
Little things that just change everything.
Hold on. I gotta get it. Hold on.
I had no idea about this. That's interesting.
You never knew people would be so passionate about cereal, but it's an important food group. I mean, most people grow up on it. Let's be real. And it's the one thing in college you can always have, and
afford
and not have to cook.
Ramen, cereal. Ramen,
eggs.
If you have a stove, eggs. Some people just had a mini fridge and a microwave.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
That's what I had.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Found it. Oh, found it. It was in the dishwasher.
He's back.
Spoonies, and see, he's got look, he's smiling at you.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So it's a fork.
No,
basically.
it's a spoon. No, it's round. It's a spoon. But so with every bite, you're getting crunchier cereal, and you're getting happiness, smiling. Because there's a dopamine release in your brain when you see someone smile. That's why your natural instinct, unless you're a horrible human being, is to smile back at them. And when that happens, dopamine releases and we feel happy. So with every bite, you're getting dopamine, you're getting cereal that's not too soggy. The good people at Spoonies, this is not a paid endorsement.
I love this.
Spoon YZ.
There you go. Very.
No, I said it wrong. It's Spoons. Good Lord. It's Spoon ZYS. I call it something else, apparently. Spoon ZYS. Go get yourself some spoonsies.
Well, good to know, because I didn't know about it. So
I definitely didn't either. I had a designated Tony the Tiger spoon I used to.
I still have. All right, so everyone knows about Flintstones vitamins, right?
yeah.
But they used to be a Bugs Bunny brand. And you got Bugs Bunny little vitamins. And there was Elmer and Daffy and everything. And I have this plastic bowl. It's my designated cereal bowl. And it has to be hand washed because I can't imagine what will happen if we throw it into the dishwasher. But I've had it since the first apartment I lived in when I was a kid. So I had to be less than like 6 when I got this thing. And it's even got these 3 burn marks in the bottom from when Mom left it on the, she put it down on the stove and we had the electronic burner and it burnt a mark in the bottom. But I still use it and it makes me happy.
That's all that matters.
I love it.
Okay.
This is great.
So I think
we started talking about ghosts, remember?
We told you at the beginning we were going to ask you the full basic questions.
Yeah, we're smiling at spoons and cereal. Great.
I think we're just going to wrap up with the question we like to ask everyone at the end of all of our Q&As. Since we're trying to keep it PG after Sabrina's awkward comment, we're going to improvise this a little bit.
It's Boxers except on Fridays.
So we like to ask everybody we talk to, everybody has that moment where you think you know the paranormal, you think there's something there, and then you're at an investigation or have an experience where you have that moment where you're like, oh, shizzle, it's real.
Yeah.
We call that our oh shizzle moment.
Yeah, I like it.
What is your oh shizzle moment?
Had some really good ones over the years. I think for viewers, the one that would probably stand out the most was Lep Castle. It was Lep Castle in Ireland. It was still Ghost Hunters, even though we're international. It was kind of like the unofficial spinoff. And in the chapel, which for TV purposes was the Bloody Chapel, something lifted me straight up and dropped me down on the ground. And they weren't actively filming me when this happened, so they had to edit the best they could. And so in the edit, you see me walking toward the back of the chapel, and all of a sudden you see me start to turn, and you see the camera go to the ceiling, and then next thing you know, you see Tango standing talking to me, and I'm laying on the ground. They did the best they could with it, but what actually happened was Tango and I were done investigating, and we were just standing there shoulder to shoulder, just kind of BSing, waiting, because our camera operator was at the end of the chapel, and he was trying to get a point of view shot for where they said they used to throw bodies down this pit there. And so while Tango and I are standing there, he swears to this day he actually saw my feet come right up off the ground. For me, it happened so fast. It was like I got hit by a wave in the ocean. I got lifted up and dropped straight back. And like I had no idea like what just happened. This is a completely new thing for me. I've been like tapped before, like maybe a little scratch, but never lifted up and dropped down like that. And I feel like that's like a once in a lifetime moment. It's never happened anything close to that in any investigation. And to have been there and to have felt that, it was like, oh, wow. And then honestly, at that point, I was not a very respectful investigator. That really kind of changed my perspective. And I was like, okay, like the message was received, And so since then, I've been much more respectful. And I was really enamored with the moment because I was like, wow, like I didn't think that could happen at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So you think it was them kind of putting you in your place a bit? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. Because we are like, we're on like season 3 or 4 Ghost Hunters, and we're pretty successful in what we're doing. Like here we are, the big bad Americans. I was making fun of Ireland. I was making fun of like the elementals and their fairies and all this stuff. Like, and my good friend Barry Fitzgerald, who I just met for the very first time, but I didn't know we were going to be good friends. And Tango and I were upstairs provoking and doing all this stuff. And Barry comes up. He's like, "Oh, guys, what are you doing? The pressure's rising, blah, blah, blah." We're like, "Oh, yeah. Okay, Barry, we'll stop." And God bless Tango. He's so sweet and innocent. He's like, "So we should stop, right?" I'm like, "No." Like that guy puts Jameson on his Lucky Charms in the morning. Just do what you're doing. And, we were getting activity. But then, like I said, you get to that point. And it's like, okay, I'm not giving you anything anymore. Like there's no reason to have this conversation. But then they really kind of put the exclamation point on it. And, as you know, from investigating, sometimes the best evidence we get, the best interaction is when we're not even trying.
Yeah.
We're not actively recording. We're not like we're changing, we used to change tapes. No one has those anymore. But like, you're getting a snack, you're running cable, and that's when these things happen. They're intelligent spirits. They don't want to, perform on command. They do what they want sometimes. And that was one of them. And I was just like, what the heck just happened to me? I also learned, if you look at that video, the rest of that chapel has hay everywhere. Where Tango and I were standing, there's just rocks everywhere. So if you have an opportunity, put something soft behind you just in case something goes wrong. Good idea.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
Yeah. So honestly, I just really felt blessed. Like people think it's weird. So you get knocked down and you're excited. I'm like, yeah, it was awesome.
Well, we're a different breed.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We're unique. Well, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
This was fantastic.
This was so much fun. Great stories, great insights, great advice. So anybody who wants any more information, your website has been going up on our little ticker on the bottom of the screen.
Excellent.
Along with our link tree, where anybody who wants to catch this video at a later date, you can find our YouTube channel in the link tree link. So again, thank you, and we look forward to all your future endeavors that we can check out.
Yes,
definitely.
Thank you so much, ladies. I really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you.
Yes, you all. See you on the road sometime soon, hopefully.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.
Good night.
Okay.